Hillary Clinton gets a post-debate boost in our new poll. This is CNN Tonight. I'm Don Lemon. Clinton 5 points ahead of Donald Trump nationally. That's in the wake of one piece of bad news after another for the Trump campaign. The New York Times reporting that Trump wrote off $916 million in losses in 1995. And New York's Attorney General ordering the candidate's charity foundation to stop fundraising, saying it's in violation of state law. Meanwhile, questions tonight about how women on Trump's hit show The Apprentice were treated behind the scenes. I'm going to talk to two Apprentice contestants about that. And live from New York, it's Saturday night. Did Alec Baldwin nail his Trump impression?
My microphone is broken. She broke it with Obama. She and Obama stole my microphone. They took it to Kenya. They took my microphone to Kenya and they broke it, and now it's broken.
Well, let's get right to our new polls tonight. CNN's Tom Foreman has that for us. Tom?
Hey, Don, what these numbers say most of all is that this was a very good week for Hillary Clinton. Look at this. She's now at 47%, 5 points ahead of Trump at 42%. She was 2 points behind him about a month ago. And look at this. Johnson 7%, Stein at 2% for people who are looking for alternatives out there. And she's doing this with some key demographics. Look at what is happening with the male vote. Yeah, she's at 40% and he's at 45%, so she's still trailing him, but she was way behind him, and she substantially closed that gap. And of course, with women over here, she's still at 53%. He's at 40%. Trump is absolutely being hurt by this tax issue. Almost 3/4 of the people we surveyed said he needs to release his tax returns, and more than half the people we asked said the fact he's not releasing them suggests he is hiding something. And for all of Trump's talk about how he's going to reach out to minority communities and convince them to come to his side, visiting black churches, visiting African American communities, look at the African American vote. Not budging a bit. Clinton 95%, Trump at 5%. Of course, all of this matters most when you talk about the electoral vote. And if you turn to our map right now, our projections on what's going to happen here, yeah, you see a lot of red. But in the big population centers, which control a tremendous number of electoral votes, Clinton is running strong. If you take those states and the ones that are sort of light blue here, like Colorado, if you put all of those in her camp, that's it. She's won the race. Trump has to win all the red states, all of the light red states or pink states here, and all of the yellow states, and he has to tip at least one of these light blue states in his favor if he's going to win in the Electoral College. And the enthusiasm gap is closing a little bit. Her support has been very anemic in terms of people being excited about her candidacy, while he hasn't had that problem. But now look, she's up to 50% of enthusiasm among her voters. That's a big climb for her. He's at 56%, still ahead, but it's much closer. But here's the one thing that both candidates and parties should still be worried about. Most people in this country remain not thrilled with either one of these candidates. Look at their unfavorables. Still, 54%, 59%. That suggests that come January, no matter who wins, it could be a rather uncomfortable inaugural. Don?
Very well put. Thank you, Tom Foreman. Now I want to bring in David K. Johnston. Johnston, the author of The Making of Donald Trump, and Jeffrey Toobin, CNN senior legal analyst. What is it, The Nine? You have a new book out, too.
American Heiress, about the kidnapping of Patty Hearst. Yes. But let's discuss the election.
Let's talk about this, because what do you make of that? I feel like the election, I've been doing this since Donald Trump announced that he's running for president, right? So it's been 14, 15 months since we've been talking about this. I think the election just started right after the first debate. The real battle, the real election. Am I wrong?
I think you are wrong, actually. I mean, I think there is, a lot of people have been following it very closely all along. But I think when you have a significant amount of distaste for both candidates, people are sort of fluctuating around. And anyway, I'm sorry, go ahead, David.
Well, the people who are undecided, there actually are people out there who are undecided.
Undecided at this point.
The debate, I think, had a big influence on them, and then 5 days of caring about how much a Miss Universe I never heard of from 20 years ago weighs. Right. Interesting issue to focus on if you want to be president.
There's going to be a fascinating sort of test in this on Election Day, or in the period leading up to it, which is you have one campaign, the Clinton campaign, that has invested tremendously in a ground game, in getting out the vote, and really grassroots campaign. Trump has done very little. Maybe that'll matter, maybe it won't, but it is certainly a more dramatic difference between the parties than we've seen in quite a few elections.
So you can disagree with me. I don't get mad.
That's okay.
That's fine. So let's talk about this. You were talking about a Miss Universe, whatever, and this, some of the missteps and some of the things that are happening now. David, nearly $1 billion loss is stunning. The Trump surrogates are calling this genius, and that he took advantage of the tax laws to his favor. Is it genius? Do you agree with that?
I don't think it takes a genius to lose $1 billion. To make $1 billion may require some genius, but not to lose it. There was some genius in this, and the genius was in how Donald Trump orchestrated this under two different sections of the tax code so that he ended up benefiting himself and at the same time shortchanging investors and bankers and others. I mean, there's a price to be paid for having net operating losses, and that price was borne by other people, and Trump walked away with $82 million of money as a result of this, plus whatever else he earned tax-free.
Would it have made a difference had it been May or January or some other, where he had gotten in front of this instead of letting it? Would it have made a difference?
Well, I mean, I think he has completely mishandled this whole tax situation, because it's basically been trust me from the beginning, and no one trusts anyone about someone else's taxes, and and this tradition going back to the 70s of every candidate releasing their tax returns to be both the only candidate who doesn't release his taxes and the one candidate who has the most complicated financial life, that was destined to be a big problem.
His core supporters are working class white men, correct? Who pay taxes.
Correct.
How is this going to sit with them, you think?
I don't know. One thing that Giuliani and Christie have said, which I think resonates a little bit, is that, you know what? No one's obligated to pay more taxes than they're obliged to. I'm a businessman, he's a businessman, he's just doing what he's supposed to. The problem is, if he's actually paying zero in income tax, that might seem to people just excessive.
Well, and the reason he can play zero is that it shows that the story of what a great master businessman he is just isn't true. Donald has left a trail throughout his career of failed enterprises without bills. His fortune, you could argue, actually derives from tax benefits that he's gotten, and money he borrowed that he didn't pay back, and workers who performed that weren't paid, and vendors who weren't paid, not from any genius on his part.
I want you, this is him explaining the time, what was happening during that time.
The news media is now obsessed with an alleged tax filing from the 1990s at the end of one of the most brutal economic downturns in our country's history. The conditions facing real estate developers in that early 90 period were almost as bad as the Great Depression of 1929 and far worse than the Great Recession of 2008, not even close.
He doesn't deny the report, by the way, he says alleged, but was it the Great Depression in the 90s, is he right?
No, well, the economy was growing in the 90s. We actually had at the end of it budget surpluses in this country. We had higher incomes at the end of the 90s than we have now. Trump overpaid for things. He wildly overpaid for them. He admitted that years ago, that he said that he
like the Plaza Hotel, like the New York Air Shuttle. I mean,
right. He bought about 23-year-old aging jetliners that should have been put out to pasture and tried to make money with them by charging high prices, and people were not interested. And he had casinos. It's really hard to lose money in the casino business, but while others in the business were investing in the business and in customer development and getting people to come back, Donald was pulling cash out of his casinos as fast as he could and weakening them, which is why they were among the first to fail.
But having reported on him, having been here and seeing all of that, do you think the average voter around the country realizes all of,
No, I don't. But
does that resonate with?
But I think what will resonate with people is, I'm paying taxes. It's coming out of my paycheck. You're not paying any taxes. Am I a chump? I think that will resonate with people.
Jeffrey, this is CNN's new poll was taken before this tax bombshell in the New York Times. This tax bombshell from the New York Times. 86% of registered voters say in paying taxes that it is a civic duty. 57% say they think Donald Trump is hiding something. How do you think that's likely to affect? Will that affect voters?
Well, see, I think it is, you're right that some of this is hard to understand, but it's easy to understand losing $1 billion and paying nothing in federal income tax. And it's just got to be a problem. It'll be very interesting tomorrow night in the vice presidential debate, which is not a high profile, clash. What will the candidates say? How will Governor Pence say it's okay to pay no federal income tax at all, because you know it's going to come up.
Mm-hmm. And Donald also, in this loss of $900 million, if it wasn't inflated, he put it in. He organized in a way that prevented him having to pay another tax bill that was due. He then put this into this company he created, where he sold stock for the first time. The shareholders went from $35 a share down to nothing. Well, he took out
17 cents or something.
17 cents, and he took out $82 million after he stuck them with the tax attributes that weren't desirable. So that's an issue that, if people understand at all, he swindled his investors as an argument. I think that could hurt him.
That was a question I was going to ask you. What about the people, the vendors who weren't paid, the people who had investments who lost money, you know, when their stocks went down or whatever their investment, if they start coming out speaking about this? But remember, the Trump University folks came out as well, didn't really have that much of an effect.
Yeah, but there's a cumulative effect, I think, that goes into example after example after example of people who weren't paid, hiring illegal immigrants and fighting for 18 years not to pay them their $4 an hour. And case after case after case certainly has to have some voters who support Trump saying, what's really going on here?
Yeah, we have a lot of people on television who have a lot of opinions, but David has actually done the work. He's written an actual book about Donald Trump's finances, about his life, and I just think it's worth listening to him about the details of what actually went on.
Yeah, and that's why.
Thank you. I'll give you a book.
That's why we have.
That's why I said it.
That's why we have him here, and that's why I said someone who has studied this, who has lived through it. How do you think it's going to resonate with the average person out there? Because you have this, and then on top of that, you have the foundation today with a cease and desist, and now they're saying, the Trump side saying it's politically motivated, but
I mean, it's worth remembering what a foundation is. A foundation is not just a business where you open a checking account and you start doing business. Mm-hmm. You have to certify to the government that you are engaged in charitable works. So the government has to approve what you do every year. What's happened here is that this is not just some box he didn't check. He has been saying he's running a foundation with no government supervision at all. That's just not how the law is supposed to work.
And using the money for his own benefit. And my wife, by the way, runs a big public foundation. But he's been using the money for his own benefit in a variety of ways. That's totally improper, too. And it's a further indication of who Trump is and his disregard for others.
Thank you. I appreciate having both of you here.
Mr. Don.
Vice presidential candidates Mike Pence, Tim Kaine, take the stage tomorrow night for a debate this election season. That's tomorrow night, 9 Eastern, right here on CNN. Make sure you tune in for that. And when we come right back, Alec Baldwin may be even Trumpier than the real thing.
We should be talking about the important issues like Rosie O'Donnell and how she's a fat loser. And everyone agrees with me, and I just wanted to bring that up in a presidential debate right at the end, my own volition, good idea, I did it.